Now, what you're at just now is a plaque dedicated to James Connolly. James Connolly is much better known in many other parts of the world than in the city he was born in. What he is known for is one of the leaders of the Easter Rising in 1916 in Dublin. And even this plaque here, if you have a look at it, renowned international trade union working class leader, that's acknowledged, founder of the Irish Socialist Republican Party, socialist connections, so the member of the provisional government of the Irish Republic. People would say, people looking at that would say, that's interesting. I don't see much there to do with Scotland or Edinburgh. And James Connolly has been an incredibly controversial figure, not just in Scotland, but very much in this city. This plaque here is actually located opposite where he was born. Where he was born was knocked down. His family came from, after the famine, came across with many others and moved into this area here. We're now in the area that was known as Little Ireland, stretching from that part of the Grassmarket, although lots of Irish people lived in the Grassmarket, right through to Dunby Dykes beyond there. Huge concentration, Irish population, living in the worst slums in Edinburgh. And because, of course, most of these people were Catholic as well, in the very Presbyterian society that was Scotland and Edinburgh at that particular time, there was a lot of tension, antipathy towards them. So the types of jobs that were available to Irish workers were right at the bottom. Connolly's father was a carter. What he meant is he came out at night and took the dung off the streets and put it into a cart that would be taken out somewhere else. And that work wasn't always regular as well, so he's from a very poor family. Connolly can be linked with a number of addresses stretching from the Westport round to St Mary Street, because there were times when you no longer pay the rent, you had to up and move to somewhere else. So about 5 or 6 places where the Connolly family lived. But Connolly's first job at the age of 14 was his brother managed to get the job for him. His brother managed to get a job in the Evening News. Now the Evening News offices had moved, but they're down by the bridge. Were down by the bridges at that time as what was called the printer's devil. That meant he went in between around the rollers, scrubbing them to clean them. He got that job, but it was a very poor job, a dangerous job, and the only way he could see money was to sign up to the British Army. So he signed up to the British Army and spent 7 years in Ireland. And in some ways, that was an education from him. He came from an Irish background, but really it was acting as part of the British Army in Ireland that started radicalising him. When he came back to Edinburgh, there was a small group of socialists in Edinburgh, a very impressive group of socialists. They included, first of all, Louis May. Louis May was a mayor in Paris who had to flee after the Paris Commune and came and lived as an exile first in London and in Edinburgh. Another person was a man called Andreas Schue. Andreas Schue was a socialist in Austria who also, he was, for those of you who are more familiar with socialist history, he was the mentor for perhaps the best known German socialist at that time, Karl Kautsky, who actually came from Vienna. But Andreas Schue had to come into the city as well. There was also John Lincoln McMahon, who was an iron founder and had formed the Republican Club in Edinburgh. He came from an Irish background, and you can see from his middle name, and we'll make this connection again later, Lincoln. His father was very proud of the anti-slave, so that was his middle name. And a Dr. W. Grass, G-R-A-S-S-E. He was actually the minister in Greyfriars Church around there. The last person on earth you'd have thought would have been a socialist. But these people influenced Connolly, and in the city, a branch of the Scottish Socialist Federation was set up to unite the socialists. They'd been involved in trying to create solidarity with Roxburgh miners and others over the previous years. And this was the first city where socialists were all brought together in the one organisation. Socialists then, as socialists today, are terribly divided in multiple organisations, but this city, Socialist Federation, the other person I should have mentioned, John Leslie, another Irish immigrant, they came together and formed the Scottish Socialist Federation. Very quickly as well, they joined a bigger organisation, the Scottish Labour Party. Now, it's not the same as the Scottish Labour Party today. It had been formed out of the strikes at that particular time, and it gave them links with the trade union movement. Connolly became a trade unionist. When he got a job through his father, doing a similar sort of work his father had done in here. And they started organising in this. They started organising strike action, but also standing candidates in this. He stood in the St Giles ward, which is the adjacent ward, as an independent Labour candidate for the actually stood as a Scottish Socialist Federation candidate with the backing of the Scottish Labour Party. He was working for the corporation at that time. That cost him his job. Once he stood there, he came third, but he was campaigning particularly on housing. In this area, housing was the major issue. And what he said, he had particularly trying to persuade the Irish to vote for socialists, because the priests and the Irish Parnell's Irish national organisations said you must vote for the Liberal candidate because they support the Home Rule. But he said, look, if you're opposing Ireland to the landlords who are driving out of your wee houses in Connolly, you must be opposed to the people who support the landlords in Edinburgh and are responsible for the sort of housing. So that was his background there. Eventually, I mean, he wasn't able to make a living in this city, and he did move to Dublin, and of course he became linked. Moved to Dublin, then he moved to the United States, then back to Dublin, and he became linked with the Rising. Now that became so controversial that this city tried to pretend it had nothing to do with it. I'd say there are three reasons for that. One, this city is a barrack city. We have so there's a big army presence. So the fact he was rising against the British Army in 1916 had big resonance in the city. That also, it's quite a conservative city. I mean, this atypical industrial area, more of Edinburgh was finance, retail, commerce and things like that, and so the dominant politics were, when the Liberals died away, we became Tory politics, and the other huge contributing factor was the strength of sectarian Protestantism in the city. As late as 1935, a party called Protestant Action were the second party in this particular city. They had 35% of the vote, and they were virulently anti-Catholic. Those three things kept Edinburgh from celebrating, any celebration city. This plaque took until the 1970s. There was a huge opposition. The Trades Council gave it backing eventually, but even the Trades Council had people from Protestant Action on it. But eventually that plaque was allowed to be put in place. There were Connolly marches through the 90s. Some were banned and made illegal. Others were attacked by loyalists and things like that. So perhaps the first breakthrough was that Edinburgh did sponsor in 1986 an exhibition in the Edinburgh City Arts Centre there, dedicated on an excellent one, and that was the first thing wasn't attacked. Today, the Connolly Foundation is wanting to get a memorial erected to Connolly. Hopefully that they're not set where it will be up in the meadows, because that was one of the places socialists and others had to fight for the right to free speech. But you've got in Dublin, you've got a station called Connolly. You've got Chicago, there's a big monument to Connolly. Plenty of places that celebrate Connolly, but in the city where he was born, precisely because of the politics of the city and the divide between Protestants and Catholics and all the other things Edinburgh's associated, really is still not properly recognised in the state. Right, we're going to be going along further into the little island area, and I'll just point out some of the features of this particular community. I mean, most of the remnants of the Irish connection are fast disappearing, and the last ones are almost gone. The Gaelic community, the Highland Gaelic community, there is no direct evidence at all in this part, but that was the second biggest community here. The Gaelic-speaking church is up at the top of the High Street, which is not really in this area. That's where lots of people must have gone who were from the Highlands, but there is no direct evidence of that, despite the fact that between them, the Irish and the Gaelic-speaking Highlanders formed 60% of the population of this area in the 1850s. Okay.
Sound